My topic is Liferay performance. I did some, like for this event, artificial performance, tuning, measuring, load testing, whatever. Performance is always like some word where when you state I'm doing performance testing, tuning, I'm doing load testing, whatever, and everybody understands a slightly different bit under this word. So, first of all, if you want to participate, there is a site which is set up, which is public. It's called perf.liferayspace.com, and on that you will find some resources. There is a script there for JMeter. I also have a few USB sticks here. The script is really small. If you want JMeter and the Wi-Fi here doesn't really work. Who has his notebook or their notebook on their lap currently? Not too many? Okay. Well, we won't generate quite a lot of load then. I have prepared something where we could actually do distributed load testing on that machine, even though the Wi-Fi or the network here is not that good. Because if you want to try this script, it's a really simple little script on that site. You could. It will break really fast. I have deployed a few portlets that are willingly really small, so that we can actually bring this server down really soon, like with quite a low load. And well, if there would be enough here with the notebook, I can actually distribute some JMeter with the script, and we can try it, and we can see how it works in the end. Let me know, is there somebody who wants to install JMeter? Okay, I'll pass around some USB sticks. It's only JMeter and a script. Well, then you'll need to go there manually. So somebody else? Pass around the stick, otherwise I'll leave it here. It's a very small download. I think JMeter is like 20 megabyte download. Also, this is typically my last slide. I like to do these 5-minute talks, but for now this just means if you have any question, if I say something that is ridiculous, if you have done load testing already, we're all here to learn. And there is no correct and there is no wrong load testing. Well, there is wrong load testing, but there is no correct, the one single correct situation. So I would very much like you to show up and say, hey, that's bogus, or I have some experience there, if you have something to add to what I'm saying. Okay, so this is the technical day. You probably have some technical knowledge, and the target audience is the technical guy. However, when we speak of load testing, we'll also speak of money, and the load tester, the developer themselves, they're always the ones with a small change, with the coins, with like not enough money. And when you speak about the one with the bank notes, like with the paper money, with a real budget, the business guys, I've heard some questions like, why do you do this? Why are you load testing? Can't you tell me up front what kind of performance I can expect from my portal, from my installation? And you should be able to give at least a rough estimate before. Why? Because when you plan for your portal, when you use Enterprise Edition, you are licensing server per server. Now, that means you'll need a budget. That means you'll need to have some hardware to run on. Hardware currently is commodity in all of the virtualized environments. You don't really need to buy hardware. You need to allocate it, but you'll not actually need to buy it. It doesn't need to take half a year for the new server to be shipped. But still, you need to plan for the licenses and so on. So the money, the business guys, they typically want to know up front. And rightly so. How can you do that? We have a performance white paper. Now, completely non-practical, like not digging our hands in dirt. You can actually go in and find that white paper in our white paper section. This is actually, I just saw that yesterday accidentally. I took the title page of the 6.1 performance white paper. There is a 6.2 performance white paper. It's quite easy to compare. Now, what does this white paper do? It has a few artificial load tests that we did on Liferay out of the box, vanilla Liferay, and then we're actually using Grinder for this. We have artificial use cases like brutal operations on a portal, login, pure login, somebody's logging in, logging out again immediately. Logging in is a really expensive operation on the portal, so we wanted to know how will the portal handle just logging in, logging out, logging in, logging out. And you'll find numbers like this, where we have, here is 27,000 concurrent users. It handles quite well, 29,000 users. This is, actually I can't really tell you from the top of my head if this is a single machine or if this is a cluster machine. So the reference architecture is a cluster of 2 machines, but for some of the load tests we actually just tested 1 machine and then made sure that Liferay scales linearly with a second machine. So read the performance white paper to find this graph and another graph there as well, which is then the throughput. This is one of the kinds of load testing that you get where you actually test or generate load until the server breaks. So you want to know what's the absolute maximum that my server can handle. And you will always find graphs that look a bit like this, well, that's the optimum. As long as the server can handle it quite well, you will find linear growth of answering time. There is network congestion and so on. And then sooner or later you will get to the limits of the server, either the database, either memory or whatever, and performance will really break in and you will easily recognize it. Now, login time here in milliseconds, well, I've mentioned this before, at 27,000 concurrent users, you see a steep climb. What does this mean? Can this server handle 27,000 users? Well, my favorite answer, I'll give you one hint. If I ask you anything, my favorite answer, the correct answer, the only one correct answer is it depends. What does it depend on? You have some criteria on your server, which might be login must be done in less than half a second in every single case, or like in 95% of cases. What does that mean? The capacity of this server will rather be around 21, 23, like 22,000 concurrent users, even though it could potentially handle 27,000 with a second login time, but that's not what we aim for. You all know that in e-commerce times, every single second, every single tenth of a second counts. The sooner you answer, the more business you will get. So if you define half a second is my reference, and half a second is your reference. Throughput as well, but let me go back to our developer and basically try a bit. Now, well, the sample of testing will not really work with a distributed load test of 2. I can run mine and Lex can run his. Consider if you want to run more. I have 3 illustrations here: performance, tuning, and load. Those are the 3 aspects that I want to talk about. What are you trying to do with your testing, with your test environment? So consider yourself lucky. You've got budget. So you are allowed to actually use resources, use your time, use some machines, some load generating machines to put something up. And what do you want to do with that? You actually want to generate some load, you actually want to see how your system behaves. You don't trust that our performance white paper is correct for your installation. Why not? Because your installation is not ours. You probably have code that is custom, and that code probably is brand new and hasn't been really exposed to the wide audience. So something that has never been load tested probably is optimizable, just in short. Now, if you take one thing from today, how do you load test? That's it. As As long as you're not happy, test, identify a bottleneck, identify the first bottleneck that you run into, fix it. Repeat, and note, once you have fixed bottleneck number 1, number 2 gets a promotion, and will be your new number 1. Repeat until you are happy with your performance. Now that's performance testing in one single slide. Thank you. That was easy. Now, in terms of tools, there is a load of tools available. I have looked at 2. I've looked at the grinder, which basically records Python scripts and has them editable to you. And there is JMeter, which basically uses a UI, graphical UI, with a like XML representation in the backend. So yes, it can do the same as a Python script, but it's a lot more structured. So for the occasional load tester, I would say, like I am, I'm not earning my money with going to every single customer and do load testing. JMeter is a lot easier to operate. Now, what did I do in order to check, in order to do some tests? Of course, I added my own tools. I've added infrastructure monitoring that basically gives me some information about how my server behaves, how Liferay behaves, additional server information, and of course I've had manual access to the server, which helps in monitoring how does the server currently behave. The easiest tool, Unix shell tools, okay. It's not really well visible. I was expecting a better resolution on the screen, so this is just htop, basically top, showing you the load on each single processor. There is, let's say, like 50% of load on there. A lot better to see, I hope. Well, probably also not really readable is something that I've just managed to become a beta tester of. This gives you insight into your Liferay installation. Juan is there. He will have a presentation tomorrow about Liferay cloud services. And this gives you quite some information about how your server behaves. And we're suffering from resolution here. Let me briefly describe what you find here. You'll find information on the server metrics. So this line says 25 AJP threads, which is basically HTTP threads that the application server handles, and one connection pool has 22 connections to the database open. That's what this slide says. Oops, wrong button. The next one gives the information about memory. How much memory we have free loaded. There is code cache, even space, store generation, permanent generation, and survival space. So if you know garbage collectors, performance tuning actually means you'll have to go deep down into the dirt into your garbage collector, into your memory. I'll have that on a different slide in the end, but if we speak of memory, you can have 2 conditions, or actually 3. You can have the right amount of memory. Okay, that's a good condition. You can have not enough memory, running into out of memory, constant garbage collection quite often, and you can also have too much memory. What does that mean? Too much memory means the server can go quite a long time without any garbage collection, and the resulting garbage collection, once you actually run into it, will take significant amount of time. And in web, that will kill you. So if you really have a high load server, you want frequent short garbage collections. You don't want any long interruption of like that is calculated in seconds or measured in seconds. You want it to be really fast, sub-second, in order to have consistent answering. Okay. Continuing with some other things that really, well, they are not for performance. There is an overview over the fix packs that I have in Enterprise Edition, some basic server information, what kind of server am I running. Always helps if you have a big pool of servers to see that you're actually on the right server. Let me see, what else do we have? Yes, we have some performance measurements. It's actually really hard to see for myself, so I really need to point you to the PDF for that. Because preparing for twice the resolution. So this gives you information about pages. I've used this right at the beginning. You probably can see the sizes here. This says the URL, the page URL, the number of hits, and the time, the answering time for that page. So this has been done while I just did set up that portal, and also you can look into your caches. It gives you quite a number of caches out there. Anything else? Yes, this is quite interesting. This gives you the portlets that are actually shown. And they are sorted by number of times they are being shown. At the top of the list, and here you also have to rely on the size of the numbers. At the top of the list is dogbar. The dogbar portlet is basically hit on every single page. And it's really fast. It's a 2-digit millisecond number. Well, if you really work on this, or if we really work on this and make it a single-digit number, this will be a huge win. On the other hand, if my user manager, which is somewhere there, gets faster, only the one administrator that is working on the user manager will see a result. So that's not really what you want to work on. So this is basically saying, or telling you, identify your first bottleneck that you run into. The higher up you have a portlet with a high number of milliseconds of duration, the more you'll need to work on exactly that portlet. If it's a custom portlet, you know what you're doing. You know where to change it. If it's a Liferay portlet, well, check if you can go with a different one. For example, if you have a landing page that is overloaded with Asset Publisher. Asset Publisher really gives you a lot of flexibility. You want that flexibility in creating pages and sites. Asset Publisher is not the one. It's not the one portlet that you put on the landing page when you have a TV ad running and you expect thousands of people coming to your page at once. They all will see the same content, and you don't want this flexibility on the most visited page of your site. So there you are. Sometimes you need the flexibility, sometimes you need the performance. Validate and check basically on the sorting of this list. Now, I gave you a few of the things where it can go wrong, and without more really illustrations, I've removed a few just because of these resolution things. I'll just go back in and go through these lists one by one. So, where can it all go wrong? Let's start not even at your portal, let's start at your load generators. Are they realistic? That's where the business guys actually will ask you, so what are you going to do? How big is the confidence that you will put into this load testing? Once you have tested, can you guarantee that, well, your test says we can handle 20,000 users on a single server. How confident are you that we actually can handle 20,000 concurrent users on a single server? Do you have a proper load test? Or is it, well, kind of, let's push some HTTP requests to the portal? And if you look at my demo script, it's basically just 4 requests to the server that are looped over and over and over again. Those just request a single page. Is that realistic? I have deactivated all of the CSS stuff. I have deactivated all of the JavaScript requests. I have deactivated basically all of the resources that are loaded with the pages. Why? My assumption is I could go into performance tuning. Milan mentioned it. I could have load balancer in between, a web proxy in between. I could have content delivery networks that will handle all of the load for all of these external resources, so they won't hit my application server. And I said, well, okay, yes, it's realistic to omit them, to not have them in my load testing script. So I just basically removed it. And with that, I was able to go through that load test through a DSL line. Actually, it's more than a DSL line. I have a fiber at home. I was able to execute quite a bit of the testing of the server that is on the internet. So it has a gigabit connection. But I was able to do quite a bit of that at home and generate significant load on the server from home. Remember significant load because there are deliberate, slow portlets on there. Okay, are your load generators realistic? Let's assume they are, because hey, you're all professionals, right? Bandwidth. The first thing that can break, or one of the things that can break, is bandwidth. Where are your load generators located? Are they somewhat close to the server? Are they close to you at home? For me, the next thing that would have broken is bandwidth. So from home to 1 gigabit network on the internet, I have like 10 megabit up and 100 down. So with 10 megabit up, there's a limited amount of load that I can generate on the gigabit server. Now, there is another one in the previous, let me start that over. In the 6.1 white paper, performance white paper, we have tested Liferay's content management system. And that test ended when we saturated a gigabit network line with 35% of CPU load. Now, if we saturate the gigabit network on the server, there's no point in adding yet another CPU. There's only a point in adding yet another network interface and utilize that. That's when we stopped that one test and said, okay, this is fine for us. Web content, highly cacheable, so it was really easy to saturate the bandwidth. On all of the other scenarios, Liferay is typically rather CPU bound, I/O bound, well, it depends on what kind of content you're serving. Now, CPU bound, speaking of CPU bound, as long as you keep an eye on your server CPU, you can easily figure out how it behaves. Another one is server I/O. Do you serve a lot of pages? Do you serve these pages from the database, as Wieland said? He doesn't recommend. I actually do recommend serving document library in the database. We'll talk about that after the presentation. So meet us outside or at the community meeting to have a discussion. There are aspects for and against. Well, okay, server I/O can be network, can be file I/O. Server memory, too much versus not enough. I've mentioned this, too much memory means you have quite a lot of garbage collection. Rule of thumb, which I always say, if you have spare memory, if you have spare RAM somewhere, put them in the database. The database is not allowed to touch the disk in order to read. The database shall only touch the disk in order to write. The rest should come from main memory. That's where your memory is best. If you have a beefy CPU, if you have a really high-performance CPU, put that into the portal. That's rule of thumb for the typical scenarios that we see in Liferay. Database server answering time. If your database doesn't answer fast enough, there's no point in tuning your portal, naturally. Backend system answering times, if you're not using the database, but some message queue, some web services in the end, then of course, that's what you need to tune. That might be the first thing that you run into. Your portal is completely fine, is bored, the server is there idling, but your backend doesn't really serve fast enough. But unfortunately, that's not all of the things that can go wrong. However, quite a bit of those. Is there anything that somebody would like to add to it? Like from your experience, who did actually already do some load testing on on Liferay? Oh, quite a few. Is there anything that you would like to add? Like custom thing or common things that you ran into? What broke first for you?
The only thing I wanted to add, we're discussing about generators, is reusing old log script for real life generators. So, because you never know how the usage patterns will be, except if you have old logs, then you can generate real life generators from old logs. That's always been a trick that we use.
Yeah, okay. That basically ties into, are the generators realistic? If you already have a running portal, and it's not like you want to know before you start that yes, your portal can keep up with the expected load, then real-world traffic is actually quite good. Oh, neat hint, if you are testing with real-world traffic or real-world recorded traffic on a test system, which probably has your live data, like, okay, you take your live system, copy over your live data to your test server. Keep in mind that your test system shall not send out emails to your live customers, right? And a neat trick to that is update all of the email addresses in your database, make them invalid. For example, add some extra to the end, as long as we don't have a broken top-level domain. Make my email address olaf.kock@liferay.com.broken. So whenever that gets to a mail server, the mail server will say, oh, I don't know where liferay.com.broken is, so I'll better not distribute it to the receiver. So quite important if you actually are generating mass amounts of data, potentially email, on a copy of your live system. Well, plus it can be really, it can be against regulation to actually use live data in your test system. So try that in a banking system and you're toast. Okay, rules of thumbs in your environment. Identify the high frequency pages. The landing page if you have a TV ad. If you have an intranet that 10,000 people are accessing in the morning between 8 and 10 past 8. So then you don't want the highest interactivity on the landing page, which everybody will open at the same time. Keep those pages really, really, really fast. Keep all of the flexibility on the least or less frequent pages. High volume data, static data, can be moved to content delivery networks. Liferay supports content delivery networks out of the box. And media servers, for example, videos, if you have downloads, if you have videos that are 100 megabyte and more, potentially downloaded through mobile connections, they will eat up one connection to your application server, to your Liferay, if you download them directly from the document library. So for really huge downloads, it might be better to use a specialized solution, media server, video server, and so on. One of the things that typically breaks is your theme. When you have some content in your theme that is dynamically updated, remember what I described before, the doc bar is the one portlet that was requested the most. The theme is requested exactly the same amount of times. Your theme will be loaded on every page hit, so it better is really fast if you're striving for performance. And neat story, it's a little bit nasty or embarrassing, but I kind of like that story. Some customer was approaching us and asking, hey, I'm going to do a load test. Can you tell me what to look at? Like what typically breaks first? And we're like, what can we say? What breaks first? Anybody who has an opinion on what breaks first? Well, I give you the hint there. So the answer that somebody gave, which was not relayed to the customer as such, but the answer that circulated internally was, well, look at all of the code that does not start with com.liferay. But actually, look at the code that starts with com.customer name. Just because that's the freshest, the newest code that has never been load tested. So the odds that you have something in there that is not properly load tested are really high. Liferay has been really load tested. It's not that we're perfect, but we have that test already. Thousands of customers and users have done it already, and we have found quite a bit, we have optimized quite a bit already. Your own custom code probably has not gone through the same process. So, no pun intended, but it's typically your own code that breaks first, if you have heavy customization. Okay, there was a reminder that I forgot. Let me jump over this and basically give you a few things about JMeter. So I have a few optional slides here, and I don't. Well, let me go through them because it might be hard to really utilize this network. Some things that I ran into, again, we're suffering from the resolution, but it happens. When does your load test break? I was wondering. My server is really bored. There's nothing on, but the load test should be in full, with a full power. What happened? I started logging on the load generator, and there I found test failed, Java LAN, out of memory, error, Java heap space. So keep in mind, your generators might break first. And also, you will need a significant amount of hardware if you don't slow down your portal significantly like I did, in order to get along with a lot less generators. You will need significant amounts of hardware to actually bring down a single server. Why? Because every single thread, every single virtual user that you have will do a lot of simulation in order for you to be sure that you're testing the right things. The script that I have here is basically just requesting the pages. What you want is you want to request the pages, and you want to assert that you actually got the right page. It doesn't help just firing HTTP requests. You actually want proper output back, right? So what's the purpose of hitting your server hard when you don't test what actually comes back? You can do this like on a single instance when you just use your own browser during the load test and see how the server behaves. You will by far not cover all of the load testing bugs, but you will see the answering time. The more virtual users you have on your server, the further down your answering time goes, and you can actually follow this live. But keep in mind, stupid things like this, your load generator might run out of memory, might run out of CPU. So don't monitor only your server CPU, monitor your load generator CPU. You might have a test that runs 10,000 concurrent users. In the end it will, but it won't run 10,000 concurrent users in the 30 minutes that you schedule for it. It might just take, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hours for all of them to continue, and then they're not too concurrent anymore. Okay, well, I guess I'll skip these slides for now and try to see what the real interface does. So this should be a bit easier. Is that somewhat readable? Probably not in the back, right? Yeah, it works. Yes, no? James, you're not 30 anymore, right? Okay. You should come further to the front.
I can see transaction controller.
Okay. So I have a page here, which is basically requested, and use all of the gray stuff here is CSS, JavaScript, and so on. Let me point to single things. There is a timer in there. What does that timer do? It basically just says, this is think time. we have had instances where somebody told us, oh well, you do state that you can have 20,000 virtual users logging in at the same time, like you have 20,000 virtual users executing a certain script. What does that mean? A virtual user, what do they do? They request a page, they type their name and their password, and like 5 seconds later they hit submit. When a virtual user browses the site, you can see them click, read, identify something, click, and so on. That's what you want to simulate in order to know how many users can you handle. You don't want to. You probably don't want to know that you can handle 10,000 requests per second. You want to know that you can handle 10,000 concurrent users, right? Well, probably you want both, but the number of users is the more interesting number, I think. So there we have timers in there, and you can easily break kind of any system by just hammering HTTP requests to it. But 10,000 concurrent requests does not mean 10,000 concurrent users. There's a big difference between them. Mouse. Check what I have here. Oh yeah. Mouse. Starting with this thread group, this is kind of a single test that we have. Also something that you might want to take into consideration. We have a number of threads, users. If the red laser is visible. So number of threads, users, there are just at 120 because I was interested in, well, how does it handle these 120 people? Ramp up period in seconds, 240 seconds. What does that mean? For JMeter to introduce all of these virtual users, it takes 240 seconds to have every thread running. And I want to loop all of this for 10 times. So basically, let's say this test takes 30 seconds. It will run 300 seconds altogether. Kind of, there's some random time, but let's say it's 300 seconds. So it will actually introduce the users in batches. It will gradually start to introduce those users. You typically want this behavior because no server on the internet is typically just put right onto the internet into the storm of new users. You at least only get the new connections connecting to the server, while the others continue to carry their load if you have a cluster. I probably need to start that over. So consider you have a cluster of 5 servers and you're introducing a 6th server. Server number 6 will now only get the new traffic, while all of the other 5 servers will continue to handle their heavy traffic that they already have. So server number 6 you want to start gradually, because when you bring in server number 6, when you bring in a new server, it will have cold caches. And just putting the server cold cache right into the main traffic is a recipe for disaster. It does not give you any information over how many concurrent users that server can handle. You rather want it to gradually improve. Once you have this, by the way, once you have such a load script, you can actually use it not only for load testing, you can also use it to warm up your server's caches. So there we are. If you need information, like if you need a hint on what else you can, or how else you can get a budget for load testing, if you always wanted to do load testing, use this script also to warm up your server's caches. You'll need to be a lot more sophisticated than this script, but you can actually use real-world traffic, the typical traffic, because there are a few pages that are more popular, there are a few pages that are less popular. Just request all of the more popular pages when you start up your server. with this, I think, yeah, I'm almost done. There's a few little information checklists in there, but running out of time. So the presentation itself will be available. I will edit it a bit, so in order to give you a little bit more of information for the screenshots. So not only give you all of the screenshots, that will be more or less not interesting, so that's why it will take a while, like a few more days for me to actually edit those slides and add some more information that I actually talked about. It will just be my notes, but they're not complete. And you can download this, and actually I'm really looking forward to your feedback and to your problems, to your questions that you've had, that you did run into when you did performance testing, load testing, performance tuning yourself. Okay, that shall be it. With that, do we have time for questions? No, we don't?
Oh, those people want to stay longer.
Okay, unless you want to stay longer. Well, let's do it this way. Unless you want to stay for the community meeting, where the address is actually outside at the reception desk. It's just walking distance from here. So please visit us there and enjoy the evening. And well, I'll talk to you then, I think, or tomorrow. Thanks.
Here's the mic.
I think I should announce something, but certificates. Yay! I'm certified. Okay, I'm sorry, I won't leave the stage right now. So now I'll wear my hat is in my bag. One of my jobs that I'm doing in Liferay is training. So my position is training manager in Europe. So I'm involved in trainings and so on. Well, let me do a quick show of hands. We're typically not doing the trainings in French. That's what Pascal does, who's also here, but I think in the other room. Who here has been at Liferay developer training? Not too many. Okay, well, but quite a few. So who here is a certified Liferay developer? Nobody? Okay. So you might know, if you don't, you will know it now. We have a new program which is called Liferay Certified Developer, which means that in addition to the certificate that you get with developer training, which certifies that you successfully sat through Liferay developer training, you can actually certify that you know your business, that you know Liferay. There is a test, which is multiple choice, which you do in multiple test centers. We're working with Prometric, and they have several test centers worldwide, and definitely like more than a dozen all over France. It's a 50 questions, 50 out of I think 200 questions, basically going through topics that you will be well prepared if you are, if you have been in developer training, if you have read Liferay in action, or if you just have proper experience with Liferay, with Service Builder, and so on. This all basically, what does it do? It basically certifies, yes, I do have Liferay experience. Might just up your value or your certificates a bit. You might be interested in looking at the certification or at just taking it. I think it's around 200 euros. So there is a little bit of cost involved, but it actually demonstrates that you definitely know what you're doing. And as far as I understood, Milan and me are currently the certified developers in the room. It's currently based on 6.1. 6.2 is out soon, but well, many of our customers are still on 6.1, and finding all these questions and especially answers is actually quite So just in case you are interested, let me know. I'll be able to find some sample questions so that you can see if you feel familiar, if you feel comfortable doing them, if you're interested. And well, tell your boss that he might have a certified developer on staff if he just sends you to the test. It basically takes an hour to go through all of the questions. You have 90 minutes, but you can easily do it in 30. That's it. Is there anything else? I'll probably see everybody here tomorrow for the symposium. Hopefully see a lot of you this evening at the community meeting. I think James will be hosting it.
Yeah.
So he exchanged, I don't know, what's it, like five or six digits of dollars into 3 digits or 4 digits of euros.
For now.
Okay. So I'll see you either this evening or tomorrow, and I'll be open for questions then. Thank you.